Hi, my name is Jim Booth. I'm the General Manager of First Point Management Resources, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about strategic planning. So let's get right to it. Why do we need a plan? So the first reason is alignment, where you have the board they come from different places, they have different experiences. So when you sit down and engage in a strategic planning process, it helps to align the board's thinking. So everybody sort of gets where everyone else is coming from, but you arrive at some sort of a consensus agreement on what's really needed for the association. Second thing is that it aligns actions to the mission. So where you have the mission of the organization, that's really the measuring stick that you apply against everything else. If you have something that's unrelated to the mission and it exists in programs for the association, it may be time to get rid of it or change it. The third reason is it aligns resources to priorities. So if you have just a limited number of resources, which all associations do, then it allows you to focus those resources more precisely to get the desired outcome. Another reason has to do with consistency. We all know that boards go in and out of terms, and there's elections, and officers change, and directors change, and there's orientations and that type of thing. So it allows for a strategy. A multi-year strategic plan allows for a strategy that carries over across presidential terms or board terms, and provides a starting spot for an orientation as far as strategic direction. It also allows for a way to have committees function consistently to all try and support the goal. They figure out their own way of supporting the goal, and they can work toward that. And then there's another reason for consistency, and that is messaging to members becomes more consistent when you have the strategic plan that focuses things the way they need to be focused. So one of the first things you have to do in a strategic planning process is a little bit of research. We got to talk to the members because that helps to establish or reinforces the perceived and actual value of the association to the members. Sometimes it helps to come back and ratify that or figure out whether or not the members have moved on, but the services have not. We also want to ask former members because that helps us understand where we may have failed to align our delivery services with their expectations. The third group that we want to for sure talk to are our prospective members. If we're not reaching them effectively, if the message is not right, if the purpose of the organization is not resonating with them, it's important to know that. A fourth group is vendors because they are going to be a big part of the financial sustenance of the organization. So it's very important to take their temperature and figure out what they're looking to get out of this whole arrangement and whether or not that aligns with the organization's policies and procedures and ethics. And then the final group, of course, the leaders have to be involved in this whole research process because you have to know where you're coming from as opposed to where someone else is coming from, and see if we can't meet in the middle somewhere. So those are all important areas and avenues of research. The other area of research we have to take a look at is the environment itself and do what's called an environmental scan. We're looking at the overall economy and how it's going to impact the organization, something like dues subscriptions, if that's going to change, or the nature of conferences like it has during COVID. Those are things that we have to be able to assess. We've got to look at technology developments because technology is an enabler and it's also a competitor and it's also disruptive. So we have to take a look at all of those. Regulatory actions change the rules of operation, so we need to see if there's any current, pending, or anticipated regulatory actions that are going to change the current state of play and how we would respond to those. We also need to take a look at demographic and psychographic changes among potential members, younger workers that are entering the workforce, or professionals that are entering the profession, retirees, semi-retirees, second career professionals, part-timers. These are all people that are going to have different needs and motivations, and we need to work to understand what those are. one of the most fundamental things we have to do in a strategic plan is to agree on a simple purpose. If there is no existing mission statement for the organization, then there certainly needs to be one. The thing about mission statements, though, is they have a tendency to be more complicated than is probably necessary. So everything is going to hinge on this because in order to engage, people need to understand first the purpose of the organization. So just a few things to keep in mind. The mission needs to be simple. Don't try and define the profession or communicate the value of the industry and the purpose. That's not necessary to put that in the mission. There are lots of other places to put that, and that will get communicated eventually. Try and make the mission answer the question, why do we exist? So if you can simply answer that question with the mission, that will be a great accomplishment. It's also a shorter, simpler mission is much easier to communicate and to understand. Remember, a big part of the communication process is the understanding by the recipient. So we need to make sure what we're communicating is what's being received. And the simpler the mission is, the easier it is to achieve that goal. The primary benefit of having a clear and concise mission is that potential members can understand and align themselves with the mission. Potential members are going to be naturally attracted to an organization whose purpose is very closely aligned with their beliefs. So we definitely want to be able to make it simple and easy to understand for that particular reason. So let's talk about existing operations. When boards engage in strategic plans, they have a tendency to think of that strategic planning exercise and the key objectives that are identified as the sum total of the operations of the organization. In reality, it's about 20% or less, because there's still this gigantic swarm of activity that takes place every day in order to keep the doors open. So the plan really takes the discretionary piece that's not a part of that whirlwind and drives that in a direction that's important rather than urgent. So that's really the purpose of strategic planning. So just bear in mind when you engage in a planning process, the majority of time and resources are going to be spent on current operations, which were already planned and have been functioning for a long time. A key element is to narrow your focus to a single objective. Boards are really good at adding things on that are meaningful and benefit society and benefit their members and add to the profession or help improve the industry, but they're very bad at taking things away. They don't want to remove things. But really, what makes organizations effective is not what you add, it's what you take away, because that allows resources to be focused in a very precise way to achieve particular results. The strategic plan, as you engage in that process, should identify a range of important things that need to be done over a number of years. That's very typical in all strategic planning, but the plan needs to also shift gears down to a tactical level and narrow the focus to a single objective and then devote time and resources to how to achieve that objective. Once that one's done, then you can move to the next thing on the list. But to attempt to do all of the key areas at the same time would be spreading resources very thin, and that would be a mistake as far as effectiveness is concerned. Just a final tip here is to use lead indicators. So you want to be able to let people know where they stand, committees, individual members who are contributing to the effort, the board. You need to be able to track this in a way that is transparent and obvious to everyone as to what kind of progress is being made. So challenge all members and committees to figure out how they can contribute toward achieving the goal and then track their progress as leading indicators, which are indicators that as you go through the process, if you need to adjust, you know about where you stand in enough time that you can adjust operations to get back on track. Celebrate your milestones as you achieve them, and make sure everyone understands that you've completed this objective or that objective, and it's a time for celebration, and this is, where you're moving on. So as you're tracking, all of this, make sure it's communicated in a way that's transparent. That way everyone can stay engaged. So a little bit about First Point. Yes, we do provide strategic planning. As a matter of fact, even for small organizations, we can provide limited packages for under $2,000. The time frame on these kinds of projects are inside 120 days. The longest component is the research component, so it depends on how elaborate the research component is. That tends to add the most time, and then coordinating schedules for either a face-to-face or virtual meeting. We can do a separate facilitation if there's just a need to have the board talk through this on their own, or if you need a custom program designed, we can certainly do that as well. We can follow up too, and do that as a regular part of our engagement with the board of directors after the fact, to say, all right, now you have the strategic plan. Let's talk about how you're implementing this and tracking the results on a month-to-month basis. So if you have more questions, just reach out to me. My name is Jim Booth, and I would be glad to help you. Here's my email address, and I'll repeat that for you here in just a minute. Thanks very much for tuning in, and if there's anything we can do to help you with strategic planning, please reach out and let us know. You can get me at jbooth@firstpointresources.com.